What's going on, fight fans? Welcome back to another edition of the Franchise Sports Media's The Main Event Podcast. I'm your host, Kalani, along with my co-host, Griff and King. Griff, how we doing, my man?
Doing great. How we doing?
Another beautiful day in paradise. It is hump day.
Yes,
Another
sir.
beautiful week here in Las Vegas. UFC 274 is in the books. We've had time to let a few days pass, digest it all, really look back and just say, wow, what an amazing turn of events that went on. And Griff, I gotta ask you, the man himself, Charles Oliveira, comes out victorious. He's the number one contender. What do you make of his whole transition from journeyman, 10-8 in the UFC, to now 11 fight win streak, 10 of which he's finished, guys, including 2 title defenses, kind of 2.5 with this one against Gaethje. What do you make of Charles Oliveira after UFC 274?
I love Charles Oliveira's just quick turnaround in his career. I really loved what he said. I think he said it in an interview. He said, since the birth of my child, I've realized I needed to fight for something bigger than myself. I need to fight for something more than just paychecks and getting entertained. You know, it's like he said in the interview, he just wanted to fight and put really more of himself into his fights. And so the fact that he's coming out and he has the 11 fight win streak, he's going out and he's turned himself into this ginormous name in the 155 division. And now he's getting compared to some of the greats. It's fantastic to see. It's why you watch the sports, for guys like this, for careers like this.
Very much so. Not just the comparisons, but then also what it could lead to further after your career, setting up that, because your fight life is only for so long. Also, him not just having the birth of his child, but then also having switched camps in Brazil to shoot box, where he's really evolved his striking. And we've seen that in the last few fights where, okay, maybe I'm not the world kickboxing champion, maybe I'm not the boxing champion, but the fact that I can go out here, swing and bang with some of the heavy hitters in this division and hold my own. Well, like we saw against Dustin Poirier, like we saw against Michael Chandler, like we saw against Tony Ferguson, like we saw against Justin Gaethje. It's been an enormous, impressive turnaround for the Brazilian. Definitely look forward to seeing what is in store for him down the future. Will we see him again later this year? More than likely, but let's check it out as far as who is to be brought up. We'll get on that topic in just a few moments. There is notion of, and you brought this up, Griff, on the recap show on Saturday, Charles Oliveira, 11 fight win streak, 10 finishes in those 11 wins. Are we starting to look at him as the 155-pound GOAT? Right now, currently, that title is held by the retired and undefeated man from Kazakhstan, Khabib Nurmagomedov. What do you make? What is more impressive? What Charles Oliveira has done in his run in the UFC, or Khabib being 29-0, rarely losing a round? Brazil, Russia.
I think when you look at the two, and the comparisons started getting made earlier because of the fact that Oliveira is a great grappler. The comparison started happening between him and Khabib. It's an impressive run, 11 wins. The names that he's had just his last 5 fights alone. And like you said, technically it wasn't a title defense, but what he did to Justin Gaethje, what he did to Dustin Poirier, he's making a career. He's making a strong case. But when you look at Khabib, and you have to, 13 fights in the UFC, undefeated. His last 5, very comparable to Oliveira's last 5. It's, especially when you look at how both guys defeated Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje. Oliveira did beat both those men, probably a little bit more convincingly.
Well, how they won, I mean, look, a win's a win. And sometimes, depending on the matchup, things go a different way. Circumstances, travel. Remember when Poirier and Gaethje fought Khabib, I believe both were in Abu Dhabi. So you look at the fact that, okay, now we're going way overseas. Everything plays into it, but a win is a win. It is interesting to, when you look at it, to say, okay, yes, there are some fighters on there that they've been compared to. And it is tough because both have been dominant. Now, we've seen Oliveira lose. I sometimes look at it and say, if I could see you at your worst and overcome that, that's also just as impressive as you just going out there and dominating one. But man, there is something about, ain't nobody tested me yet. I've rarely lost a round here. I would say this, and this is something, not trying to get into the Conor debate, but this is something I always felt with Khabib that folks would say about Conor McGregor. was when Conor was on his rise. Oh, the UFC's protecting him. They're putting him against strikers, put him in there with grapplers and wrestlers. Well, why don't we ever say that about Khabib? Khabib really didn't take on top-tier jiu-jitsu guys. He didn't take on top-tier wrestlers. Now, granted, Dustin Poirier, very good jiu-jitsu specialist. Justin Gaethje, very good wrestler. But Gaethje, kind of like the Hall of Famer Chuck Liddell, he doesn't use his wrestling in his fights, more so to keep from being taken down. He looks to stand and bang and throw those heavy leg kicks. So for Khabib, I always felt that we never really get to see him tested against some of the top grapplers, where we've seen Oliveira tested against top grapplers, top strikers, and he's come out impressive on both ends.
I think the argument of, Khabib not facing wrestlers, or at least top wrestlers in his career, I believe it was Ali Quinta who went the full 5 rounds with Khabib, came down to the decision. I think that...
And that was on like an 8-hour notice. Remember, Max Holloway was going to step in because Ferguson.
Yep.
And then Holloway couldn't make weight. And then like the day of, they just said, hey, Al. Because originally they wanted to give it to Paul Felder.
Right.
But at the time, this is a weird rule, Paul Felder wasn't ranked. So the commission said because he's ranked, he can't fight for the title. Ali Quinta is, Ali Quinta's in there, and he went, like you said, the full distance.
Yeah, so I think that is a slight mark on Khabib's career and his record. But at the end of the day, the way I see it, 13 wins in the UFC, undefeated. Charles Oliveira, much longer career in the UFC. That gave us more time to see, for opportunities to have the downhills, the downfalls that he had in his career early on. But then we get to see him go on this 11-win fight streak. And honestly, if Oliveira really wants to start making that case, because honestly, he probably needs about, I'd say, 2 more title defenses to equal up to what Khabib did with the belt. But if Oliveira kind of wants to separate himself, maybe he takes on somebody who's in that category of a top grappler in the division. And I know a couple guys who are sitting right there on the sidelines waiting for their shot at the title who fit that definition.
There are a couple guys waiting for their chance. It will be interesting to see what direction they decide to do. Khabib has said several times he's done. He's not coming back. Will it change? Will he want to go for 30-0? If, like you said, if Oliveira keeps on this winning streak, does he maybe convince Khabib to say, hey, let's figure out who the greatest is? You wanted to fight George St. Pierre one time to see who the greatest was. Let's see who the GOAT is at 155, me or you. That'll be interesting to see going forward. Speaking of interesting going forward, we got a couple big names, as you mentioned, on the sidelines waiting to figure out, okay, what's next for us? Some who just fought, some who have been waiting for a long time. Some of those names include Nate Diaz, the 209 bad boy himself. Dustin Poirier, who tweeted out and said, hey, I'm ready for a fight this summer. Like, let's go. Give me somebody. Him and Diaz were supposed to fight several different times. Maybe those two. We also got Michael Chandler. Now, he just fought, but he's ready to get back out there, bang with somebody. Summer, fall, winter, doesn't matter. We know who he wants to fight. We also got Jorge Masvidal out there. Kamaru Usman coming back off injury. Now, he's scheduled to possibly take on Leon Edwards. Things can change over time. And then we got a certain, Irishman out there. I don't know if you've ever heard of this guy, but he's out there as well in Dublin, Ireland. He's waiting to recover and come back, as Dana White said. He's not fully healed yet. With some of these big names out there, what do you do with them? What would you do if you were in charge?
It's tricky waters. It's tricky waters if you're Dana White and you're dealing with the roster, especially at the 155 division. I think you got to start off with Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz, you have a 1 fight left on his contract. He has been vocal about not wanting to be released, wanting to be done, wanting to get the fight over with so that he can be done with his contract and go and pursue other things outside the UFC. So with Nate Diaz, though, Dana White's not just going to throw the biggest name he has outside of Ireland out there to fight anybody.
Yeah.
You need Nate Diaz to fight somebody that's going to bring in the draw that Nate Diaz's name brings, but you also need to pair him up with somebody whose name also brings in pay-per-view buys, brings in the eyeballs. I think that if it's his last fight in the UFC, and it's going a little bit against what I said last on Saturday, I truly, as a Conor McGregor fan, would love for the trilogy to happen. I would love to see Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz, 155, and if not 155, 170. They can do both. I would love to see that fight, and that would do wonders for both men. It would settle the trilogy. It would bring in the eyeballs. The payday would be huge, and it would really kind of settle who really is the best out of those. We saw the first two. Conor has the last win, but can he finish it out? Which man could get that second win?
To me, I'm with you. I would love to see those two do battle once again. I would like to see it at 155 where they both feel a little bit more natural, but they've done both their previous fights at 170, so why not? I love the idea of putting those two together. That would be awesome in that particular matchup. It's big. It's a major headache for the UFC and Dana White to try to get these two guys to agree to not throw cans at each other, to not get into squabbles during press conferences, but that's what helps sell the fight.
I was about to say, doesn't that make it just even that much better there?
Don't we enjoy that? I get more excited on it. Great.
All the shenanigans.
All of it. I don't want you to hit a kid with a monster can when you're throwing it, but at the same time, throw the can. I want to say it. Throw a can. But Nate Diaz is in a particular situation because, like you said, you got to put him in there with the right guy that can match up with him. When you look at some of these other names, Poirier, tell me that wouldn't be a monster pay-per-view right there. Dustin Poirier versus Nate Diaz? Yes, please. Absolutely. Michael Chandler with what he just did, and he's talking about wanting to fight at 170 against Nate Diaz? Yes, please. I don't know if I want to see Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz again. The first fight, it was a nice build-up. But it really didn't invite a rematch for it. I would say this for Nate Diaz and Conor. What if they don't find the UFC again? But what if Nate gets out of his contract? What if the Irishman and Nate Diaz meet in the boxing ring? Nate boxes. He's trained with the famous undefeated Olympian Andre Ward. Conor's had the one professional boxing match against Floyd Mayweather. Could we maybe see them settle it mano a mano in the ring? Because then no grappling, no leg kicks, as both guys want to do, especially Conor McGregor. Let's stand and throw some punches and let's see who the real winner is between us. That would be amazing in itself. I don't know what to do in that particular case. Really, there was Khamzat Chimaev. That was a rumor that him and Diaz, that would be killer. Poirier. What do you do with Dustin Poirier? Obviously, we talked about the Nate Diaz one where he's coming off the Conor McGregor wins. Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje just lost.
Ooh, Dustin Poirier. There's fun options there. Justin Gaethje, that fight has got to happen.
Yes.
You have to now. Now that Oliveira just beat Gaethje, why not give Dustin Poirier the chance to fight Justin Gaethje again? Justin Gaethje just coming off a title loss. He wants a win. He needs something. Pick his spirits back up. Give him the guy who it looked like he was about to beat until that one punch, until he got that one knock on his shin. I would love to see him against Justin Gaethje. I would also not be mad at the idea if Nate and McGregor somehow work out. Why not Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler?
That would be fun.
Both men lost to Oliveira. Both men lost to Oliveira in the title shots, and one's coming off a win.
Yeah.
The other one coming off a title loss, which, a loss is a loss, but a title loss is a little bit more shine.
It does keep you up there, still in the upper echelons and whatnot. So that would be an interesting matchup between those two. Realistically, with these names matched up against each other, you can't go wrong in either direction. It's just a matter of timing, health, and who can you get to agree to sign the contracts. Only because a couple of these guys that we named, they tend to have rumors, speculations. They're not the easiest to deal with when it comes to contracts. But
shocker.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Speaking of surprises, Griff, one surprise that we saw over the weekend that we didn't get to cover just because there was so much that happened at UFC 274 in the world of boxing, in the squared circle. Canelo Alvarez, for the first time since 2013 against Floyd Mayweather, did not see his hand get raised at the end of the bout. Now, he has had a draw in between then, but he lost in a light heavyweight title fight against Demetrius Bivol. Incredible fight. Bivol, 19-0 going in now, 20-0, an extremely decorated amateur fighter. Very good boxer. On the rise, though, with only 20 fights, but he's 20-0, knockouts. What did you make of Canelo finally losing?
Yeah, I saw. Obviously we're watching the UFC fight, but we all have the phones out. We were streaming the Canelo fight and after that, after hearing that he had lost, all I could think to my head was, this is something that everyone's been saying is a problem in the boxing world. The boxing world is set up to a point where you can't afford a loss. It's not the UFC. You can't go out there and lose twice. You can't even lose once without your entire legacy completely changing. I think that this, for Canelo, there's no way around it. It is a blemish, and it is a blemish that really kind of takes him out of that conversation of being possibly one of the greatest to ever. He's still great. Don't get me wrong. But when it comes to conversations of who's better, him or Floyd did get the win over him, but he maybe could have created more success in his career to combat that. But with this second loss, it's over with that.
Outside of Tyson Fury, Floyd Mayweather, and Rocky Marciano, that's they won. That's they won. Outside of those names, everyone else is lost. Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, Mike Tyson, Oscar De La Hoya, Roy Jones, they've all lost. None of them are not considered great. So this idea that you just lost your second time in your career with 60 fights under your belt, now you're out of that conversation. It is blasphemous that that's even a topic. You are chasing greatness, and when you're chasing greatness, sometimes you fall short. In the UFC, we just talked about guys who do not have perfect records.
Right.
Charles Oliveira has at least 8 losses. He's 10 to name in the UFC. Yeah, we're talking about he might be the GOAT.
That's the UFC.
At 155.
That's the UFC. You can afford it.
Yes, you can. In boxing, it blows my mind when guys lose, and all of a sudden now you're not great. Now you're not in that special class of great fighters. It is absolutely preposterous. Shout out to Bivol for coming out for a big win. If they fight again, it'll definitely be something we cover.
Oh, yes.
Maybe we'll be there for the fights. We'll see. But Griff, another great show in the books, as always, my man.
Yes,
Look forward
sir.
to it. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Franchise Sports Media's The Main Event. This show is brought to you by the great people at the Liquids Club. Make sure you get your hydration on with their H2O. Go to their website and their IG page. Tremendous stuff that they're doing there. Be sure to follow Franchise Sports Media on all social media platforms. Until next week, fight fans, stay thirsty. Peace.